Welcome to Swank and Ment's Off the Fence, where Mr. Mentz and Mrs. Swank answer questions relating to whatever topics you provide.
If you are a student at GCHS, listen up.
Nothing we say here is the express opinion or view of Greensburg Community Schools. But if you have a question burning a hole through your brain, email us.
Who knows? Your question might inspire us. Now let's get on with the show. All right, so we had several questions that were submitted to us that were sort of related to this topic of adversity that we're going to cover today. And so we decided that we were just going to talk broadly about adversity and how to maybe overcome it, how we can practically apply what we've done in our lives and maybe give them an anecdote for theirs. We're not going to list all the questions, but we're going to talk about adversity today. Let's go with that.
Yeah, so I started off with making a list of, I gave myself 1 minute, and I listed all of the adverse things that have happened to me or are currently happening to me. And it was kind of a long list, which I was a little bit surprised about. But then again, I've been around a while.
Are you going to do your whole list?
Am I going to read it?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Okay.
It would take too much time. Because in a minute, I came up with it was pretty good.
I mean, it would take less than a minute.
Pressure.
No, I'm not going to pressure you to read.
No, there's a whole bunch of things. I think when I look at the list, what I do notice is that it has a wide variety of things.
Okay.
So from physical things, like breaking my arm or having a diagnosis of something, all the way through like deaths, the family member deaths and people that I care about dying, all the way through to just really frustrating things that I feel like are ongoing. And I don't necessarily mean at this moment, but like things that were just a wave of frustration that weren't fixable at the time, but they varied. And I found that, I know that like consciously, but until you sit down and kind of look at the array.
Yeah.
Of
Did you reflect about like how you reacted to those different things?
Yeah, I think that's what the way I took this is I wanted to give the kids practical advice. I don't know if I'd call it advice. That makes me a little nervous, but like practical ways in which what do they all share? Mm-hmm. What have I learned over the years? And like when Swank, something gets thrown in her court, what does that look like? A list of things of how to deal with them. And I can put it in terms of one of them. Like I can easily pick one of them.
How would you rate yourself on dealing with adversity?
I think I would rate myself, I'd give myself a B+.
Yeah.
Yeah. But at any given time, that could swing wildly, like inside of the adversity. And I'm okay with that. If I'm currently at a C- with something or an F, whatever, I know that there's ways to improve. Mm-hmm. But overall, I think, and I don't think I would have been a B+ in my 20s.
No.
I think right now I'm a B+.
Yeah, no, I get that. Well, I guess why I was asking was because I didn't want these students to think that we were like professionals.
No. No.
We're still learning.
I don't even know if this is this isn't the answer. This is my answer. Yeah. And if it can help at all, or even if they're just interested, I think one of the reasons why they tune in is because they want to hear our stories and our point of view.
Yeah, they want to know we're humans.
Right. What about you? How did you approach it?
Really, I thought kind of on the same line of thinking that you did, but I drew it out way longer than a minute. Like I have been thinking about it since we talked about it. And so that kind of brought a wave of emotions on me to like, okay, here are all these things. I haven't even really sat down to reflect on it, and I probably should have before this, but here are these things that have happened to me that has been adverse, in the past 10 years or so. And I just kind of thought about them and how I'd reacted to them. There were, like you said, there were some deaths and quite a few in my family, or my wife's family. And so there was kind of a lot of heartache there, and I'm pretty good emotionally with dealing with that kind of stuff. I'm almost like I don't know, I stonewall my emotions a lot, so I just don't ever feel anything. When I face adversity, it's just like nothing's going on. So
you just put it aside.
Well, I don't think I think I face it, but in just a different way than most people do.
Yeah.
Where I just, I don't really have too much ebb and flow on my emotions. It just I just kind of go with it.
Yeah.
So
I think I might be similar to you, only in the sense that I can, if I don't want to feel something in the moment, I can put it aside most of the time, not always. But if I don't let emotion get in my way.
yeah. So where I once thought that I was quite emotionally intelligent, now I have more recently felt like I am somewhat emotionally unintelligent because I'm not feeling as many emotions as I feel like I should be.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've been working on, I guess, because you can't, when you have a family, when you have a wife, and you're going through adversity, it's good for me from the man's perspective, from a father's perspective, to kind of carry the load, carry the burden. But it's also good to be emotional with people, to kind of be in that moment with people, and that's something that I'm lacking on. So something I'm working on.
Comes with vulnerability, which scares I think everybody. I think vulnerability scares. Well, I mean, I don't know, maybe that's an assumption. But like emotions are, for me, they're vulnerable. I don't know, maybe for some people they're not. There are people that sort of wear their emotions on their sleeves, but yeah. Emotional intelligence is something that, like, if you're listening to this and you don't know what that is, watch some YouTube videos because it's pretty fascinating.
Well, let's get back to adversity.
Okay. Once I did my 1 minute list, I started to think about how do I practically approach adversity. And so I came up with kind of my process, at least the way I would describe it, and it sort of goes like this. So the first thing I do is I recognize it, right? Which sounds kind of dumb, but sometimes we react to things and we don't even really kind of know what's going on. So the next step is to for me is to evaluate, is this over or is this ongoing? Like, is this something that isn't going to happen again? So I can start to process it and deal with it. Or is it something that I'm going to encounter again in the way it looks this way?
Okay.
Like, I think a couple of years ago we had teacher conferences, and we're here till like 6:00, and then like 11:00 that night my dad dies. And it was a Thursday, and I was like, I had left school, left my desk the way you leave it. You know what I mean? Like, there wasn't any, there was no preparation for a heart attack. It just happens.
Sure.
And so, my world got thrown into chaos. And I didn't really plan to pick that one, but it's a good one because it kind of centers around school or whatever. Well, that isn't going to happen again. It is, and I hate to use this word, it's done. It's not like my dad's going to pass again, right? Like, I need to process it in whatever way is the natural way for me. It's adversity on a pretty high plane. And so evaluate whether it's over or not, regardless of the adversity. And if it isn't, well, then that's a different approach for me. But I think this one is the most important one, like, other than allowing yourself to feel or sit with the feelings and I'm not good at that. Like, but I think I'm trying to get better at that. Like, this has happened to me. It is over, or it's ongoing. And what am I actually feeling? Because if I have to set that aside, that's fine, because I have to go do my job or I have to do whatever. But I think acquiring the resources to understand and recognize the opportunity to find positive aspects. So that for me is huge. So it's twofold. The first is, how can I see the positive? I have a little phrase that I use in my life. It's called orange barrels, right? I'd have to explain why, but
Say
it's
that
like
again, orange barrels.
Orange barrels.
Barrels,
right?
got it.
Like, basically my metaphor for finding the good in something. So, like, when you're in traffic and there's orange barrels and you're frustrated, well, the orange barrels are in your way, right? But, like, they're making the road better. They're next time you go, if they're gone, the road's going to be wider. Like, there's a lot of positive that can come from orange barrels too. So that's the really quick little version of the story.
Got it. I've got a similar thing to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, if you're hearing an ambulance, we might have talked about this before on the podcast, actually. If you hear an ambulance, like, instead of thinking, something negative, you think, oh, good, help's on the way, kind of thing.
Right.
Like, seeing the positive in things. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. For any like a gigantic adversity like my father passing, or a smaller adversity like I broke my arm and I couldn't work, and which sounds like a huge adversity, but in my world that's one of my lesser ones. Um, if I personally do not have the knowledge or knowledge base, I guess, to deal with the thing, then after I let myself accept, like, sit with it, I was almost saying accept it. That's a little bit harder, but like I go and I acquire the knowledge that I need, whether it's emotional intelligence, whether it's YouTube videos about whatever. And I don't take any one as like, this is the answer until I've learned a fair amount about the thing. I gain information that will help me deal. That's a pretty regular thing about my process. It might be a book, it might be an article, it might be several books, it might be several articles, it might be several YouTube videos. But we live in a time where there's information is readily available for free. And I need to understand myself, and I need to understand the thing. So it goes, evaluate it. Is it over? Let myself feel or decide to feel when it's appropriate, and then acquire the resources to understand. So I can recognize the opportunity for positivity. Because for me, I have to do that part. Like, I would challenge myself. I do challenge myself a fair amount when I'm feeling negative to go, okay, what's the positive? Like, sure, this is awful. And I think hearing this, people might think, oh no, you can't find positive in X. I bet you I could. And I bet you could.
Sure.
You just have to change the lens by which you're looking at it. Right? Like, and I could get into specifics, but I have really challenged myself in real times of adversity to find the positive. And it's like a muscle. If you work it, it will get better. It doesn't take away. I think people fear that it takes away from the woe is me of the thing. I don't find that at all. Like, the thing still sucks. But finding the positive for me does something to me that helps me face the adversity.
Yeah.
And I think my last, gain understanding after like doing all this, because this takes time and effort, and it's not just a one-day thing, and it's difficult but fruitful. Frustrating but enlightening, awkward but rewarding. And the smallest adversity to the most ridiculously difficult. I think that's kind of how I deal with it.
It's a pretty interesting approach. I mean, a lot of people don't even have the realization that they have the power to even overcome it, within themselves, because a lot of times when adversity hits, like, people are just so victimized and so just thrown off track by it that they can't even function normally. And for you, you're like, oh, I'm gonna do this myself. I'm gonna research this. I'm gonna grow from this. I'm gonna see the positive in this. That's a different approach than most people, I would say, but in a good way. I think that there's definitely some merit to your approach there. I try to see the positive in things too, and just generally speaking, I feel like I do that most of the time. Like, it's very rare that I'm feeling negative about stuff, even when bad things happen. But I think that comes with exercising that muscle. When I was a teenager, when I was in high school, I had, adversity hit, and I was not good at taking it on. In high school, for instance, if I was to do poorly, I was in athletics. If I was to do poorly, if I was to strike out, I would have taken that to the bench. I would have brought down my guys. I would have taken that to the field. I might have made an error in the field. Like, I was terrible, just from one little thing, and that can kind of snowball and cause a lot of cascading effects. Where that was something that I had to learn the hard way. Adversity is going to come, and I think that your kind of approach to is this something that's ended, or is this going to be ongoing? Is this something that's going to be chronic, like back pain, that's never going to get better? Or is this something that is just going on today and I need to just get over it?
Yeah.
Those are definitely conversations that need to be had, and just making sure that we are identifying what the thing is that's causing adversity, but then going a little bit deeper too and saying, okay, is the adversity the thing that's causing me to feel this way? Or is it something else within me, something psychological, something that's in my past, that's been brought up again, that's, causing just debilitating pain within me or suffering. And so just, I think identifying when things come, when there's a crisis, when you're feeling like there's a crisis, just pausing and just trying to reflect and trying to do your research, trying to find the positive in it. Your orange barrels. Yeah. When some people are broken, they have trauma in their lives, and a lot of things feel like adversity. So like seeing, like the lens that we see the world can feel like it's broken, and then like stuff that you're receiving is like the same thing everyone else is receiving, but you're just getting it through like this cracked lens,
I thought that on the way in, I was thinking that very thing is, so much of life seems, in retrospect, right? Like we're not 17. I think the power of the lens with maturity too, and I'm not calling the kids immature. I mean, some of them are pretty darn mature, but how you receive a lot of life, the attitude that you have for, oh geez, this again, and I'm gonna react and just react without understanding that like every not only has everyone else probably experienced that, maybe not everything, but also your reaction is now flooding everyone around you. And so we have a responsibility, I feel like. I'm not saying that humans are perfect, but your past trauma and your past issues and whoever you are, and your reaction to adversity plays a part in everyone else's experience of the now, the present. And so it's not your fault if you can't handle it, if you have something deeper, right? Like what you're saying. Mm. But you have a responsibility to those around you to carry yourself in a way where you don't cause adversity for others because you can't handle yourself. Like you have a responsibility to yourself. I don't care what age you are, unless you're like a little kid. Little kids are they get a free pass on this to some extent. But that's a harsh view. Like I recognize that my view is a harsh view. And I'm not taking away from like childhood trauma and things that we carry around. But I think that if we're kind to one another and we don't let our stuff spew out onto each other, I think that's where it gets really murky for me. Is I have a responsibility to react. If you get angry with me and out of the blue, I mean, we're teachers. We have kids erupt, right? Like I have a responsibility to carry myself. That's a small adversity. And that might be because the kid has a lot of stuff going on and has had a lot of stuff going on. But if you're not working on it, then I think that's a flaw.
Yeah, you're doing future you a disservice.
Yes.
Yeah, I think students and teenagers have this kind of capacity to be careless with their emotions and with their reactions to things. Like, oh, I'm going to give you an assignment here, guys, and it's like, oh, everyone starts complaining. It's like, well, why are we complaining? We're in school. This is not adversity. This is the expectation. But then, like you were saying, like that just spills onto everyone else and just kind of creates this atmosphere in this environment where everyone just kind of feels more negatively because you just influence them in a negative way. And that's probably something that needs addressed, within your own stuff. So, I think that there are levels to adversity, like we were talking about earlier. There's going to be death. That's going to happen. People are going to die. Everyone's going to die. We kind of left a conversation like this at one point, but it's true. We're all going to face this adversity. Somebody or yourself is going to have this kind of they're going to face disease. They're going to face death. And if we aren't prepared prepared, or at least preparing ourselves now to face these kind of situations, then they're going to be so traumatizing that we're not going to be able to just come back from it, right away. I think that we have to start facing more smaller adversity now, with a little bit more courage than what I'm seeing anyways, in the way that I reacted as a teenager, so that when you do face these situations, and as you're an adult, you're bound to face these things, then you can take them a little bit more. You can carry your emotions a little bit easier, and you can help carry other people through it as well. I think that's something that we need to kind of focus on, especially as men, as I was talking about earlier, just kind of being what I would say the leader of your home, the leader of your family, like being able to just carry them on your shoulders, is something powerful. And if you can't get through the flu without it just crushing your whole life, then we got to work on it.
Yeah. It's funny that you bring up men. Instantly when you said that, I thought of women, young women that are currently causing adversity in each other's lives, to the extent that it's kind of sad how much women play a game of I'm going to be nice to you, to your face, and then I'm going to trash you.
Just stab you in the back.
Behind your back. Or I'm going to get this girl, like I'm gonna walk away and go, oh gosh, did you see blah, 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 blah. Like there is a real crisis, in my opinion, of how women and girls treat each other, and don't have a real strong camaraderie. There's a real fakeness. It sounds incredibly negative, but I think it can be overcome. The strength of guys worries me, societally, but also the strength of women, because we can be pretty powerful when we get out of our own heads a little bit and stop worrying about how someone over there is talking about this one and how I'm going to participate in that, and like it's all just a waste of time to me. Mm-hmm. It's just to be stronger people, men and women. We need to be better to each other. We need to be better friends. We need to be better to the person sitting next to us that we don't hardly know, that maybe we think we don't like. I bet you don't know that person. I bet you don't have any real understanding of who that person is. Because it's fascinating to me when you get a bunch of kids together. I wonder about your men's group. You get a bunch of kids from different backgrounds together, whether it's all boys or all girls or a mix. And you really kind of tear that away. It's pretty Breakfast Clubby, if you know what I mean. And kids, if you haven't watched The Breakfast Club, I know it's an old movie, but you need to watch it. It's amazing how kids can come together when they feel like when they're not being judged, or they don't have to judge, and they don't have to kind of go with that inner nastiness or whatever.
Yeah, for the men's club, I think we're just rallied around the same perspective that, we've all identified that something needs to change. And so I think that's why they're here, why they're there in my group. And I'm glad that you mentioned the men's club. I wanted to share this thing because I'd been thinking about, I've been kind of praying about how I was going to approach this conversation, and it hadn't even dawned on me that on the back of our Young's Men Club shirts, our kind of motto that we came up with a couple years ago was forged through suffering, tested in adversity, and saved by grace. And interestingly enough, Tyler Dwenger, he's my leader in my young men's group. You've got him in class.
Yeah.
Pretty incredible kid. He texted me this morning, and he was talking to me about the shirts. He's like, hey, I think we should talk about these shirts, and specifically talked about those 3 things on the shirt. And I was like, dude, that's incredible that you just sent me that text. That's, that's God's timing right there. And so I hadn't even thought about the shirts, and that's kind of the way that we approach things in there, is that we are going to suffer in there just a very small amount through just weight training and so just bonded together through that weight training and through suffering just a little bit, just pushing ourselves out of our comfort zones. That allows us to just rally around that common theme of being tested. And just a little bit of adversity there, so that we can then go out in the real world and not be that's not the test, I'm gonna push them to their limit and beyond in there, so that when they do, when they get sick, or when somebody in their family gets cancer or, you know, whatever comes at them, they're just going to be a little bit more prepared for it. So that's part of the reason for the young men's group there, but also kind of part of the reason for the shirts too.
Do you think that they carry that out of there? Do you think that they carry that perspective? Like, not that they want to, but do you actually think they practically carry that into the school? Like a Friday morning, do they come in, and then Monday morning, do they come in, and do they carry that forward into their, because I can imagine that would be a different kind of adversity that they would, like, can I practice this outside of that group?
I think that's the goal. I'm sure that we're not there yet. I'm not there yet. At least, you know, on Friday going forward into the weekend.
Yeah.
That's the approach that we're taking. Now come Monday, are we still carrying ourselves like that? Maybe not, but they know that come Friday again they're going to have to face.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. So it really has been, and I think, you know, I posed it to the teachers. Our young men are in crisis, but so are our young women, which you just talked about. And I just wonder who's pouring into these students. I've chosen to hold the line. You know, I said I've seen enough. I'm going to try to make a change, and that's been, I think, impactful for some of the students. But then, like, who are they going to allow to influence them outside of my group? And you know, who is pouring into these kids and, like, giving them these ideals and these values and saying this is virtuous, this is not virtuous, we should be doing this, we shouldn't be doing this. Obviously parents should be doing that. Who else are we allowing to influence our students? Because obviously what we're seeing in our society and in our hallways is something that needs to change. But is it ever going to change if, you know, people aren't willing, adults in the building and adults in society aren't willing and able to stand up?
Yeah,
and say enough is enough.
It's a form of adversity, like this right here, this topic.
Yeah,
I think the difference between hallway, like I just go to the hallway because we all run our rooms, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it used to be that upperclassmen, you knew the upperclassmen in the hallways because they were these kind of, they led by their, and there were always kids who jacked around and this and that. And I'm not trying to talk about an ideal, but I too, just to summarize, I guess, I too kind of hope that the kids see some positive here. And I love that you do that with the boys. All right, well, we should wrap it up because we have to go teach.
Yeah, so I don't know that we necessarily got to much practicality.
You know what? If the kids want a part two, because I feel like I got a little bit into it and we kind of got off track a little bit in a good way. Did you think through your practicality?
You know, I don't know if I necessarily came up with a solid string of thoughts on that. I think I was pretty chaotic and random today, but I think we could probably recap with what we thought.
Yeah.
So my approach is taking on everyday life, just understanding that there is going to be harder things that are going to happen. So the small things that happen to me in life they don't throw me off track whatsoever. And I've been training towards this for a while, and I'm by no means even close to where I would like to be. But, you know, my growth from as a teenager to now has been enormous. And I would say, you know, going to the military helped a little bit.
Yep.
It helped quite a bit, actually. But you don't have to go to the military to, you know, kind of be hardened to adversity. I think that just understanding how to face it, how to be more resilient to it, and just understanding that the small things are going to come every day. Big things are going to come down the pike at some point, and you got to be prepared for them. So taking a swank approach, or, you know, just identifying and reflecting on the things and understanding there's a deeper nature to most things that are going on than just the surface level that we're seeing them through our lens or through our broken lens. If we've got some trauma in our lives, it is a good way to start.
I mean, I think what you just said, and then sort of my earlier approach, kind of, it's maybe it'll help somebody. Maybe it'll spark some thought.
Yeah.
And for me, if you spark thought, that's helping.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. Well,
Any closing thoughts?
kids, like, let us know if you want a part 2 or if this sparked any ideas, and see you next time.